You are listening to the Strange Oddities Podcast on the KGRA Radio Network. Please visit their website, kgraradio.com. You are listening to the Strange Oddities Podcast, which rebroadcast on the KGRA Radio at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. Pacific Time.
And please welcome your host of Strange Oddities Podcast, Matthew J. Haas.
Hello, viewers and listeners of Strange Oddities Podcast tonight. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of tonight's podcast. Real excited as always because we have an interesting guest every week, or we try to have interesting and entertaining guests each week on Strange Oddities Podcast. We have a really interesting topic. It covers everything under the kitchen sink, from mysteries, conspiracy theories, UFOs. I mean, you name it, it's there. So it's going to be a really heavy topic. New time for the Strange Oddities Podcast tonight, guys. We're going to extend the show a little longer than usual. Fans kind of requested for the show to be a little bit more, a little longer. You wanted more, so I'm giving you more of the show. I'm excited to give you an hour and a half of the Strange Oddities Podcast, and so from moving forward, it's going to be about 90 minutes. I may extend it to 2 hours. We'll see how things go. But anyway, chatting here. Get the logistics out of the way, guys, real quick. Please subscribe to the show. If you haven't subscribed to the show, guys, go to the main YouTube channel of Strange Oddities Podcast. Click that little bell. Please share the show if you like the show. Let us know how the quality of the show is. If you listen live, let us know. Can't exactly listen live during the show because otherwise you'll hear really bad audio. And we have a chat. So we're multicasting on Facebook and YouTube. You can comment whether you're watching it on Facebook or on YouTube. Either way, I'll see the comments. If you have questions for the guests, we'll try to answer them best we can. So without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce this really cool guest that we have tonight. We have, as I bring him in here, he has moonlighted with several paranormal groups across the tri-state area. He networks with a lot of people in the field. He's a really smart, intelligent paranormal investigator, or paranormalist, if you like to call him. So we have Mr. Gary Greener on the Strange Oddities Podcast. Gary, welcome to the show. I appreciate you, being our guest.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
we're gonna have a great night.
Yeah,
we're really gonna go down the rabbit hole with this one.
Oh yeah, are you guys ready to go down a really deep rabbit hole?
We're going to talk about time travel, government conspiracy, alien intervention, psychic stuff. I mean, just human experimentation, soul regression, cloning. I mean, like
mind control.
It's going.
Yeah, it's going.
But so I'm ready if you are, Maddie.
All right, I'm ready. So, guys, again, it's a heavy topic. I might as well start with a little brief synopsis of what we're going to be talking about, just so everybody has a heads up what we're getting into, other than time travel and what this entails. So, basically, guys, if you're into movies, I would really recommend watching The Philadelphia Experiment with Michael Paré. It gives you a little synopsis, not the the real deal, the real story. There's a lot of books and information out there about it. There's a lot of documents and documentaries out there. The Philadelphia experiment took place in 1943 during the World War II era, and you had key players involved such as Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein. You had the American Navy, and you had the military. You had basically everybody involved. You had you had, at the time it was called Fort Hero, now known to us as Camp Hero, which also did an experiment in mind control had something to do with the Philadelphia experiment. And again, it has ties to UFOs, aliens, and supposedly the military, experimenting with, gravitational experimentation and
you make it sound so nice.
Yeah, I do.
You make it sound so nice.
Yeah, I do. But there's so much to talk about because it's like this could go on like 50 episodes alone.
It could. All right, but how about this? Let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
Let's start with Project Rainbow.
Yeah. Project Rainbow, which took place on the USS Eldridge.
In the mid-40s, Project Rainbow was a government project designed to render an object radar invisible. That was the initial intention of the object.
Yeah.
It's based off of Einstein's unified field theory. And you're right. Nikola Tesla, John Eric von Neumann, potato. Yeah, I'm going to murder names tonight, and I'm probably going to screw up a bunch of dates, but I have them written down, so I'm going to hope for it.
Well, we're time traveling.
Yeah, we are time traveling. Now, keep this in mind, people. You're going to hear about stuff tonight that's not going to make sense, but you got to bear with us.
Yeah.
So back in the 40s, they were trying to they wanted to get a handle on the radar and the radar capabilities of the enemy forces. All right. So, and they were looking at battleships. They were looking at seafaring vessels primarily. One, because of their capability of holding the amount of generators and equipment needed in order for this experiment. But two, mainly it helps to try to protect our fleets going across over to Europe. Now, the theory behind it was they slam a whole bunch of energy to create an electromagnetic field around an object and rendering it radar invisible.
And they were hoping that this would win the war.
Yes.
During World War II.
This is the hope. This was the goal.
Right.
So in early back, actually it starts back in the 30s, back at the what was it called? It's the Institute for Advanced Studies out in Princeton. Nikola Tesla and von Neumann were working on this theory of being able to render things magnetically invisible, right? Basically rendering them invisible from electric radar, as opposed to non-electric radar. Yeah. Anyway, so the government sits there and says, "Hey, this is a good idea. Let's get this together," and we start working for it. So they created. It was called the Philadelphia Project because it took place in Philadelphia Harbor.
Right.
Because anybody that's aware of history at the time, Philadelphia was one of the primary shipping outlets during the war.
Right, for the Navy. Yep.
We had the largest, deepest freshwater harbors along the East Coast.
Right.
So what they did is they took a ship called the Eldridge. It was a destroyer-class ship. Everybody's heard about most people have heard about the Philadelphia experiment at this point. They took all this equipment up into the ship, stick it out in the middle of the harbor, turn it on, and all of a sudden, what happens?
They disappear.
Well, there's this glow, and everybody's like, "Hey, this is a great idea." All of a sudden, it disappears off of radar.
But it shows up in another state.
Well, it disappears off radar, and then it disappears out of the harbor.
Right.
And just coincidentally, somebody down in Norfolk, Virginia, sat there and said they saw the ship appear.
Right.
But the times don't sync up. First time travel. But what happens is when the ship reappears, they can't communicate with the ship and they're figuring its electronics down. So they go out to check on the ship. Well, they find the sailors wandering around disoriented and dazed. They're not sure where they're at or what they're doing, but even more importantly, they find guys stuck into the bulkheads. Like they're literally fused into the bulkheads.
Right. Their body parts are all over the shit.
Yeah. So,
which is freaky.
What do they do with this? They're like, this is a bad idea. So they adjust a few things, clean up the ship, and then they do it again. All right. So the second time they do it a couple weeks later, the ship this time literally just poofs out of existence.
All
right. Now, this is where the rabbit hole opens up and you really start going.
Right.
All right. Because two brothers are on the ship. They jump off the ship because things are going wrong. And they figure they're going to land in the water and swim to shore.
And be safe. Right.
No. They show up in Montauk.
Right.
In 1983.
Right. They jumped all the way to 1983.
So now it starts to get weird. So we'll finish up with that. So what happens is the ship just miraculously appears. All the equipment's destroyed. The ship comes back in the harbor and they say, okay, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Let's mothball it, put it on shelves. They close down the project. A couple years later, they go back and revisit the project. They open it up again, but this time they split it into two projects. One, to try to figure out why all the guys went crazy. And two, they send the stuff out, most of the electronics out to Los Alamos. And that's supposedly the precursor development to the stealth technology that we have today. So that's a whole other story, one other day later.
Yeah.
Apparently that's involved with aliens.
Yeah.
But now jump ahead, because I got to try to rush through this because, like I said, it's going to take forever.
Yeah.
So the project gets milled around for about a decade. Like I said, half of it, the electronical part of it, heads off to Los Alamos. Now the psychological part goes up your way to Bellhaven Labs, or Brookhaven Labs.
Brookhaven.
They're doing the human factor research studies there. So they're bringing these people up, trying to figure out what caused these guys to go nuts. How is it, how do we fix this? More importantly, how do we recreate this? So first off, Brookhaven Labs has a project going on called Project Phoenix. It started in the war and it's still continuing up to, some people believe, to this day. It involves mind control, thought manipulation, even stuff like propaganda and mental deterrent aspects. So, I don't.
Yeah, and then
I don't want to keep rambling.
No,
and because I do feel like I'm rambling right now.
No, that's all right. There's so much that ties into this, like you said, and
So anyway, all right.
So those two guys that jumped off the ship end up in Montauk.
We're going to get to them because we got to get to Montauk first. How Montauk came about.
Right. Okay. Let's start
During the war, Montauk was an air force base with early warning radar satellite system in it. In fact, the satellite is still there today. The big satellite dish still sits up on top of the building.
It's the largest radar ever built, and they claimed back then that it didn't exist, but it did.
It's called a Sage radar. Right. It was actually designed to actually send out signals. It was basically an aerial sonar type deal.
Right.
If anybody's familiar with radar as opposed to sonar, with radar, it just picks up incoming transmission. Sonar sends out a signal and looks for return. That gets down the rabbit hole a little bit later.
Yeah. And if I read somewhere too regarding that radar, they claimed that they put it there so that they could track the enemy possibly coming to Long Island so that they could be prepared and catch them sooner before.
Well, it's like right at the mouth towards New York. Obviously, New York's a primary target for enemy invasion.
Right.
So,
but I don't think it had anything to do with that remotely. That was a cover up itself.
So Brookhaven starts to experiment slightly with using electronics and radio signals in order to affect these people, to get them or to start screwing with their heads. So they take their results to Congress, and Congress goes, no, we need to shut this down. It's an inhumane project. I can't believe we even went this far. The project's been shut. The plug's pulled. You're done. So then the military pops up and says, we'll take it. So they have this old base that's setting up out on the point of Montauk. This is around the late 60s now.
Right.
Coming towards the early 70s. there's nobody that's living out there at the time. I mean,
Yeah.
you live not that far from it.
Yeah.
You've been up there. You've seen it how it is now.
Couple
I
hours
imagine
away.
being even less, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a base. And the wonderful thing about the Sage radar operates at the same resonant frequencies that they were experimenting with the mind control aspect of it. Oh, my cousin's on from Alaska.
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, I just want to, let's real quick just say hello to everybody in the chat real quick. Ganyak Paranormal's in the chat room. What's up, guys? Hey, Roy Pool's in the chat.
I know, right? It's the only way I can see comments.
Janine Mershoff is there. I want to say hello to her, and your cousin Diane. So say hello to her. And my wife is helping moderate the chat group for us. I want to thank her. It's our 9-year anniversary tonight, by the way. I just want to make a big shout out to my wife. Love you very much. And our 9-year anniversary tonight. So yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yep. 13 years together, actually. And next year is our 10 year.
She hasn't stabbed you yet.
Nope.
Not anymore. Have you ever woken up with a pillow on your head?
I've come close to seeing a pillow over my head, but you know.
So,
Anyway. All right. So continuing along.
Okay, so now the government says, listen, we have this old base up in Montauk. You guys can use that. We'll retrofit it. We'll reopen the base. We'll throw some military guys up there and just tell people that it's nothing more than we're turning it into a R&R base,
right?
For soldiers that have shell shock that are coming back from the war. We're going to plant them there.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Great cover up. Meanwhile, they go back and open it up.
Right.
Now, if anybody has this at home, I suggest get it out and get ready to make a hat. All right,
like in the movie Signs. Right.
Yeah, this is where it's going to start getting really weird.
Yeah, you don't want the aliens to access your mind.
So they set up down at this base and they're like, okay, we got this great radar. We're going to hook it back up and we're going to utilize it. It's like, so now how do we affect with people's minds? They're like, well, we've learned by bombarding them with radio waves, we can affect their personalities and even to an extent control. But we think we can control it with the right amount of electricity. We can control a person. So they literally, in the facility, build a microwave chamber and they stick people in this microwave chamber.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever stuck an egg inside of a microwave. Doesn't do too well.
That's your result.
Right. But now this is under military black project. So literally at this point, they're like, oh, well, next. No,
but they'll just blame it on Plum Island and things wash up on shore and, appear to be like, oh.
Yeah, Plum Island, that's another story. If anybody's not familiar with it, Plum Island is right off the tip of Montauk. Plum Island is where they do every type of genetic chemical experiment on animals. They create the most horrific stuff there.
Yeah.
And it's a great vacation spot.
Or are they?
No, the government literally says they're there. You're not allowed to go towards the island. They agree with it. It's such a great vacation spot. I mean, they want Hannibal Lecter to go vacation there twice a year.
Real quick, what's funny is, not to veer off too much off the topic, but
you can't get off the topic on this thing.
So my wife and I went on a boat tour, lighthouse tour, and we were out there, and our friend took us past Plum Island, and it was part of the tour. And he's like, "Oh, look, you can see Homeland Security every time we pull up close to shoreline of the island. They say hello."
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I'm sure they want to get to know you really well.
Yeah. He goes, "We can't set foot on the island because of that." I was like, damn.
But apparently nothing ever escapes from the island. Nothing ever gets out. Nothing ever washes up on the beaches and gets pictures taken of and put in the New York Times. Never happens often.
Oh, like the Montauk Monster?
Yeah. Like that. Like the Montauk Monster.
Yeah. Which they claim was a dog or some kind of...
Yeah, it was like a dog or whatever.
Or a whale.
So anyway, now we have the Montauk Air Force Base. The secret Montauk projects are going on. They're still having Project Phoenix going on, which is the mind control stuff. They're now experimenting with the alternative side effects of the original Project Rainbow, which was the interdimensionality and the time travel aspect going on. This is literally where it really gets weird. Now you can go and start researching this stuff. And the funny thing is, with the projects, with the people, with the dates, with the objects involved, like the Eldridge and stuff, you can find documented government reports stating that, yes, it was at this location at this time, and these people were here and they were involved in this. But then you can find equally amounts of paperwork with the same government seal stating, no, they were never there. They never existed. This is all made up.
Right.
Like,
of course.
Wait a minute. It's really great.
Well, to
you
them,
can literally sit there and look at the two same government briefs with the same numbers on them, with the same signatures and the same seals stamped on them, and it says two separate things about the same thing. You're like, wow. Government.
Yeah, that's the government for you. I'll be tapping my phones and listening in on this conversation.
Yes. No, the government does not tap your conversations. They are not listening in.
Big brother.
Sure. I like the government.
Yeah.
They are my friend.
Yeah. They take taxes out of my paycheck.
So.
All right. Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about? Anybody in the chat, ask a question.
Yeah, feel free, guys. We're talking about time travel. Does it exist? Gary, I don't know if you came across this, but there was a teacher, I believe, from Connecticut. I was trying to get him. He's a university professor that claims he has figured out a way of time travel. And he actually has a book. He's an African American, some dude, I think UConn. I believe he's from UConn, if I have the right university.
Okay.
And he believes he's figured out a way of doing time travel.
Well, there's a lot of people out there that think they have figured it out.
Through the mind. And the reason I bring that up is I recently, ironically, was watching a great movie, The Butterfly Effect. You ever see that?
Oh, with Ashton Kutcher?
Yeah.
Where he can go back in time when he thinks really, really hard and strains at himself and confuses the world, but it has weird effect. No, I never saw it.
Oh, you never saw it? That was a great movie.
No, I did. I wouldn't say great movie.
Well,
it was decent.
For an Ashton Kutcher movie, it was good.
It has a good effect about it. Now, the only problem I have with that, with how it has echoing consequences, and it literally, that movie, no matter what he tries to do, things go to crap on the backside of it.
Yeah, and he gets the bad end of the deal.
Always.
Yeah.
It's a learning movie. It teaches you not to mess with laws of nature.
Yeah.
And so, the government's doing it.
Right. Well, the one thing that people are going to ask, were there witnesses? Did anybody see this happen other than the Navy? There was allegedly this guy that witnessed it when this happened.
With the Eldridge.
Yeah. And I have his name here. Well, he went by two aliases.
That's the other thing. Everybody has two names involved with it.
Right. So this guy, Carlos Miguel Allende, or sometimes he went by Alan, supposedly witnessed this happen, and he wrote letters to this other researcher later on.
When he was doing his research after the Bermuda Triangle book.
Right.
That's what really spearheaded this off. We can go back. In fact, I think I have his book floating around here somewhere.
Right. But this guy, Jessup, did research on him, and he ended up being like a crackpot because he actually he couldn't write. I don't know if he couldn't read or write, or I think he could read, but when he wrote, he had cryptic writings, or they were subliminal messages. You know what I mean?
Or was he just writing in cursive?
In cursive.
Have you heard that new challenge nowadays?
Yeah.
They're challenging each other to be able to spell their name without lifting the pencil off the paper.
Wow. Yeah.
So taxes pay for that.
So and this guy Allende, everybody was looking for. They thought if they could trace this witness and interview him and get documents from him, that it would be more credible to lend that this actually took place.
Now that does hold true. So there's this guy that said that, hey, I was there, I saw the ship disappear. He wasn't on the ship, mind you. He witnessed the ship.
Right.
There were people that they're down in Virginia, I don't have their names, that said that they had seen seen the Eldritch show up there. There were a lot of people. If you ever looked at Philadelphia Harbor, it's not a secret location.
No.
Like if you go up and look at Google Maps, you're like, wait a minute, the sports stadium's right next door. It's like there's a highway that goes right across that you can look down into the harbor.
Right.
It's like, so I'm like, if you ask me, I'm like, that's a pretty ballsy place to conduct some type of experiment like that.
Right.
But
yeah. And the other interesting part of this also, again, this can be a whole nother episode. If you go back to Nikola Tesla, now how UFOs and aliens get involved is he allegedly was into the whole alien UFO thing, and he was trying to rig inventions to try to communicate with things out in outer space. Allegedly he did, and they gave him information, and he took this information and kind of built some of this equipment with that information to kind of help along the experiment. But he warned everybody that not to do it with human beings. Don't have anybody on the ship. That they foretold that if they did that, there would be a catastrophe, and they kind of warned him, and then he tried to warn them, but they did it anyway.
Well, that was the thing, like Tesla, and we talked about this the other night. Somebody like Tesla, who was super intelligent and super creative, had thought on such a different level, could think of some of the most amazing things. But the one thing he always said is, I don't do this. Don't do it with people. Don't try to take it to this level. Could you take it this level? Don't try to take it this level. Einstein was another one.
Right.
Einstein didn't want anything to do with the Manhattan Project because he knew what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
He knew where it was going to go.
Right.
And everybody kept lying to themselves and was like, yeah, split the atom. We'll have nothing but power. We'll never really need it. What's the first and most thing they ever built?
Yeah.
With it.
Yeah.
He knew that. And Tesla knew that. And so the theory kind of goes is that the stuff that they were doing out in Princeton at the Institute of Advanced Studies was literally the stuff that Tesla originally found from communications with alien satellites before there was even telephone as readily available.
Right. He was an inventor ahead of his time.
Yes, Tesla is the father of the modern day whiz bang.
Mm-hmm.
He was definitely ahead of his time. So
hence the word time again.
Yeah, it keeps coming back. It's always going to come around to that.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to like the Montauk with time travel projects as well and aliens, after they got done realizing that if we just throw somebody in a giant microwave, it's a really bad idea. Let's stop doing that. Supposedly, they decided to try to use psychic ability in order to control people. They were trying to build a weapon for the government that sits there and says, hey, with the snap of a finger, you can get your enemy just to surrender and throw all their weapons down because that's what they want to do. So that's why the military was like, here's more money. So they start experimenting with psychics. Back through the 60s, you had mind control experiments like MK Ultra and stuff like that. These progressed on into the Montauk Project. You had electronic propaganda manufacturing, electronic deterrence, much like how they have the microwave guns nowadays that the government uses for crowd dispersal. This was all done in Montauk at a close scale with people. By the way, apparently they weren't always volunteers.
There were alleged abductions.
Which brings us to the Montauk Boys. Have you ever heard of the Montauk Boys?
Yep.
The Montauk, for those that haven't heard, the Montauk Boys were, it's a story about how like kids just went missing off the street, like homeless kids, runaways, and stuff like that. They called them the and then they would show up later on with like half their brain melted, not even figuratively, but literally, and wandering on the streets. And then that's where the Montauk Boys come in. That's another dark road that you go down to that's attributed to the Montauk Project.
Yep.
But before we get too far down, that
right,
everybody's sitting there going, "Yeah, this is a bunch of bullshit." Sorry.
Hey, they can research it as much as we have.
You can research it. Trust me. Good luck with that. Bring your foil hat.
You want to see our notes and the books and all the reading?
Bring your foil hat. bring a cup of something.
Wait, I have. Here's one book recommendation.
Montauk,
Montauk, which is what we're talking about right now.
Philadelphia Experiment Project Invisibility.
And yeah, this
Dark Realm of Electronics. I mean, it's like it just
Preston B. Nichols, Peter Moon. That's one.
We'll get to Preston in a minute.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then we got this one here. William Moore and Charles Berlitz, Project Invisibility, which is actually kind of gets into the accounts, the witnesses' accounts of people that were involved on the ship or off the ship during this experiment.
Now,
that's just to start you off.
Yeah, that gets you going, and then once you get into it, I mean, like the project with the Eldridge and stuff, they hint at time travel. You had, like I said, you had two brothers, Duncan Cameron and his brother Al Bielek, which, by the way, aren't their original names nor their original bodies. You know, that's a great story on that one. Those were the brothers that jumped off the ship. Those are the ones that showed up in Montauk in 83. They realized because they were trying to recreate the experiment at Montauk that they were doing on the Eldridge. The first time they did the experiment with the Eldridge just phased into this other realm and then popped back.
Right.
You know, when they did the Montauk one 40 years later to the day, keep that in mind. Apparently it created a wormhole effect and linked the two. Now, this is where time travel gets a little weird. So
it's weird.
In 43, the Eldridge fires up its generators and starts to open this portal. Simultaneously, 40 years later, at the exact same moment, the Montauk project tries to open a portal with their generators, and it links. They've essentially created a time wormhole. These two guys jump off the ship. They don't get spit back out in 43. They get spit out in 83 in Montauk. Now, nobody's sure if they got spit out in the underground facility or out on the lawn.
Right.
But along the way, they realize, so they go to try to shut down the Montauk side of the project, and they can't shut it down because it's drawing power from the Eldridge.
Right.
So it's decided at that point, somebody needs to go back and shut down the Eldridge's generators.
And it was them.
Right. Stories conflict. Al Bielek says it was him. Duncan says it was him. You know, there's a lot of weird stories. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here. I'm really sure somebody used acid.
And because of all the conflicts, that's why everybody's like, "What? This couldn't have happened." But there's a lot of documents that kind of are there that make it seem.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's these conflicting documents. You'll find them. You start researching. You're like, oh, look, here it tells the whole story, and then you'll find something. And you're like, wait, that says completely opposite, but it's signed by the same guy at the same time. Which brings that interdimensionality too. Did they create such a rift with this that we have multiple timelines that are intersecting in between each other and weaving around?
Well,
who knows?
And then you have the Bermuda Triangle theory.
Yeah, you have the theory from the Bermuda Triangle that pulls it down into it. The effect. But with the Eldridge, though, so one of the brothers supposedly goes back, shuts down the generators, severing this tunnel, whipping them back into place. Because just like the Eldridge disappeared, the section of the Montauk facility disappeared at the same time. So I don't know how you explain that. It's like, hey, you that just got here, jump into that void.
Yeah.
Now,
how it doesn't kill him.
Now, like the stories really get out of hand in this point for depending on which road you go down. You follow Al Bielek's story. He went back, shut down the generators, and as it snapped back through time, instead of bringing him back to one of those points, it flings him far off into the future. Like 30 something. It's like, and that's like a real long down story. Now, if you talk to Cameron, if you follow his brother's story, he went back and did it. And it snapped him back to 83 instead.
Right.
Okay. And he now has psychic capabilities.
Yeah.
And he was the primary subject for the Montauk experiments. He was like the catalyst person for the Montauk experiments, which again, it's a neat story.
Right.
But I would get to spit it.
Yeah. But the other thing that interests me, well, it's all interesting, it's all crazy, but like what people don't understand is as much as these people sounded like they were nuts or a crackpot, there was mind control involved. And again, there was, supposedly when those men came back, they were all messed up. And, something like that, I can imaginably say, sure, that could mess you up and you're not going to be normal. And how do you expect people to, respond after going through something like that?
Well, it's also the greatest government cover-up of all. You declare all these guys mentally unstable that were on the Eldridge, right?
Oh, yeah.
So no matter what they tell anybody, they're just a bunch of loonies.
But they're going to use that as the scapegoat, of course.
Yeah, it's a great cover-up.
Yeah.
Oh, you talking to Larry? Yeah, he was on the Eldridge. By the way, that shit crazy.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was on the Eldridge.
If you want to go down an even darker rabbit hole following the history of the Eldridge and how it disappeared, not through through a time vortex, but through government record.
Mm-hmm.
It
vanished.
It just pitters out of existence on paper and doesn't show up again until they find record that it was sold to Greece and now it's a different team. And
then to think that they freaking sold it for scrap metal.
Well, the ship was 60, 70 years old.
Yeah, but it was historic. And what happened to
one of the stories is, all right, so the Eldridge was a destroyer class ship. It was supposed to be part of a fleet. There's reports that say that it was put into service as a battleship or as a destroyer and then was commandeered for this experiment. Along the lines, there's the same government requisition forms for the building of the Eldridge with specific characteristics that were laid a tribute to this experiment. They built this ship for this experiment. One of the gun turrets was false, and they could take it out, and that's how they got all the generators and all the systems in.
Mm-hmm.
So
we have something interesting in the chat. Actually, Janine Mershoff says, there's supposedly pieces of the equipment still around. And she says,
"What's a try
to redo? You want to open up the same portal and connection?"
All right, Janine, where are we going?
Are we going to 1983 or are we going to 20? What year did he go to?
83. I could rock a Thriller jacket and the flock of seagulls. I can do it.
Yeah. But if I'm not mistaken, going back to this book, they do try to recreate by taking the parts. Supposedly, they got their hands on some of the equipment to bring to.
Well, Eric von Neumann,
Neumann,
who was originally one of the original creators of the Eldridge project that brought the Philadelphia experiment to where it got to. He was actually part of the group at the Montauk project. So they had his research. Not only did they have his research, they also had his interactions. Now, this is in the 60s. This is only 20 years after the first one started when they started going down this road. So everybody's like, man, how did they get that guy? It's all no, it took a decade for them to work on it to get to it. Oh, my TikTok's going off. Hold on. So they took the same equipment and they tried to, and that's what apparently caused this wormhole. Because he's like, hey, I'm going to build the same thing. Let's kick it on here. And the one thing I do find kind of odd, Matt, how far are you from Montauk?
Only a couple hours.
You're only a couple hours. I'm only 15 minutes from Philadelphia. So we could actually try the experiment. We'll get 2 cans and a string, really long string. You run up to Montauk. I'll go there and we'll try to make a tunnel. Janine, you bring a battery and some jumper cables and we'll get this thing going.
That's some long string.
Trust me. It's all time. It all happens together.
Yeah.
Remember, the 83 project happened before the 43 project, but the 43 projects ran the whole thing.
Yeah.
Think about that theory.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you get into time travel.
Wait a minute. You just my brain is swelling.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens when you really start thinking about time travel and the effects of it.
You see what you started, Janine?
You know,
I'll
we've already had this conversation, so I can tell you how it's going to end, but I won't tell you because I like the surprise.
Yeah.
You know, that's how time travel works.
And we could go back and do it again.
But yeah, no, you can't. You can't go back and do it again. You cannot recreate time. It'll tear you're tearing the fabric of time space. So you have to create an alternate reality to shoot it off there. You know, the Ancient One told the Hulk that. Didn't you hear that?
That's funny. Now, real quick, just to make this really interesting. As far as Hollywood goes, because in our conversation that we had during the week about this, because we got together, we had some really cool conversation about that. One movie that really stands out, which could really hold the theory of time travel and stuff, which was a great movie, Stargate.
Yes. All right. So you want to talk about pop cultures? We'll talk about in the entertainment industry and what was inspired by the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk project, even.
Right.
So obviously, the first and foremost, which was inspired by the Philadelphia experiment, was the movie The Philadelphia Experiment. Okay. Makes sense, right?
Yep.
Kind of tells you the story that Al Bielek tells you. He was Michael Bray in the movie. The Final Countdown with Martin Sheen. Remember that? Where what was it? They
opened up a portal. Yep.
Yeah, the aircraft carrier goes back into World War II. That was inspired by it.
And they try to interfere by trying to win over.
And then they decided they couldn't because it would change too much.
Yeah, they were like, no, we can't do it.
The movie Stargate talks about it because of the time and space portals apparently that the Montauk project that went on at Montauk came from. They came from alien technology. In fact, it was alien technology that stopped them from nuking people in a little chamber. There were a couple episodes of the X-Files that they did that were inspired from these. The show Sliders. Does everybody remember the show Sliders?
I used to love that show.
From the Montauk Times. The 60s TV show The Time Tunnel, describes to a T, ironically, and this is why I say Montauk happened before the Eldritch happened, but the Eldritch happened first in time.
It doesn't make sense.
No, it never will. And here, to blow your mind anymore, it happened at the exact same moment.
Go figure.
But the most recent thing, and probably the most popular thing out there right now that was inspired from the Montauk Project is Stranger Things.
Which I never knew about.
The TV show Stranger Things was originally to be called Montauk.
Yep. And I never knew that until Gary mentioned it, and which I think is freaking awesome.
And they took a lot of the ideas of the upside down and the interdimensionality of it, as well as the psychic capabilities of stuff and enhancing the psychic capabilities and the reactions that they can cause and stuff like that. Now, that's all inspired from stories from the Montauk Project.
Right. Janine says, I'll meet Roy in Philly, and then we'll come to you and Matt, and then off to Montauk.
There you go. We can do this.
Yeah. Gary, I don't think you've been to Camp Hero yet, have you?
No, I have not. It's like one of those things. It's always like, oh, let's go. And then something always stepped in front of it.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's a couple hours away, and it's like, you always, ADD kicks in. You're like on your way, like, I'm on my way to Montauk. Oh, shiny. And then the next thing you know, you're somewhere else.
Yeah. Like time travel.
And I'm not going there in the summertime because I hear the mosquitoes are like this big. So
actually, it's gotten a lot better. The state has really cleaned it up.
Doesn't matter. Mosquitoes can still get this big.
It's a state park. Anybody can go there if anybody's interested. If you're in the area, it's
beautiful.
Yeah. Montauk actually, I think, was rated like one of the best beaches in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Even with the mutant animals swap coming up?
Well, I don't know if I would drink that water or swim in it, but
doesn't it Hudson empty out into that? I'm pretty sure I definitely wouldn't drink that water.
But yeah, Camp Hero is pretty cool. My wife and I have been there quite a few times. You can also go and picnic. It's a campsite. You can camp, It's state owned. The bunkers are still in existence. They're still there.
And supposedly they're still doing experiments in those subterranean bunkers.
I don't know about that, but
no, that's the theory. If you do look into it, even up to this day, there is a no-fly zone around Montauk Point.
Really?
After 4 p.m.
Oh, wow.
The theory is one of the things that they used to do with that antenna system was they tried to use, because it was designed, they were trying to create a sonar. One of the side effects of creating an airborne sonar type system was they were actually able to create an electromagnetic ray that could shoot down. And apparently they shot a couple planes down over the years by accident.
Oops.
To explain the crashes that happened up around that way. So it is actually still a no-fly zone around that after a certain time.
The plane crash that took place in the 80s. The hell was the name of that flight?
Which one? I looked into it. There's been like 4 around that area. So I'm like, man.
Well, there's
Ruth like kind of pulls into it. It's like,
yeah, there's a claim that that's what possibly crashed one of those planes.
Yeah. But like talk about Camp Hero. So when Camp Hero was a functioning, well, it wasn't an Air Force base. It was a radar listening station. That's all it was. When it got shut down after the war, and the military said, "Hey, we'll turn it into a black site for your projects and experimentations." They threw a bunch of soldiers back out into Camp Hero, and they had it active as an active base again.
Yep.
But one of the things that they used to like to do is to try to experiment on the people in the base. And there's pictures of it from back in the late 70s, early 80s, when they're supposedly running the Montauk Chair project, where this gigantic radar installation is pointed at the base. Not up in the sky, not anywhere else, pointed right down where all the guys are living.
Right. Chad, I wonder why.
Well, I'll tell you why. I'm glad you asked. So after they realized they stopped nuking people was kind of a bad idea, they started experimenting with using psychics. Well, apparently they got this information from aliens. Space-dwelling reptoid aliens. Okay. About this chair that enhances psychic ability. So they give them the designs for this chair to build this chair in this chamber, and they build this chair in this chamber, and they pump it full of energy. And what it is, you take somebody with a psychic, which Duncan Cameron was supposedly, after his trips through time, now has these great psychic abilities. Mm-hmm. They put him in the chair and say, Cameron, we want you to concentrate on getting this guy to act like a chicken. So they ram this energy through, and they use the radar to focus it at somebody, and the guy starts acting like a chicken. So now they start going down that. Now get your foil ready. Now it gets into some really weird stuff, because now that they're experimenting with this,
baby, get me some foil.
Right now you're getting there to not only mind control, not only being able to control people, but you're also, now he's actually starting to be able to, because he's so powerful of a psychic from all this, he's able to actually bring thought forms into reality, tulpas. There's a story of where the base commander liked Budweiser. So every day he would get in the chair and visualize a can of Bud sitting on the guy's desk, and it would appear. Yeah, that's one of those stories out there. And then they started getting people's heads blowing up, things like that. They started experimenting down there with trying to create, once this tunnel happens, they're trying to get this tunnel, they're trying to create this time tunnel. And yeah, they called it the time tunnel. So first they created a chrono screen. Are you familiar with a chrono screen?
Yes.
All right. For those that aren't, a chrono screen is basically a TV screen that you can see through time. It's kind of like the chronovisor that the Vatican supposedly has in its basement. Yes, another story. You know, I can make a joke right now, but I won't. I don't want to get you kicked. So anyway, so what they could do is they would be able to look back in time and see historical events through this screen. That was the first step of the time travel experiments. Along the way, they were able also to visualize not only things in time, but they realized that they could not only visualize things in our time, but time on other planets. Like they were able to move the camera around on the chrono screen to see all over the universe. I told you this gets really, really far. So from there, okay.
Is anybody confused yet?
If anybody has questions, ask them. I know Ron has to have a question. This is right up his alley with radios and everything else. It's all about radio receivers, Ron. This is all about transmitting and receiving radio signal.
Electromagnetic field. Yep.
This is why I'm going to experiment on you when you start playing with your radios more, because I want to make sure, because if something starts happening to you, I want to record it.
Electromagnetic generators.
Yeah, more power makes it even better. So they created the utilizing the chair. Apparently, they were able to create the chrono screen.
Gagnac says, like a psychomantium.
So after that, then they were able to create a tunnel. And now that starts a whole other black site project where we started sending agents back in time, all through time, to not only witness, but also change events. And when they realized that changing events had echoing effects, your butterfly effect, into the future, it started to destabilize the fabric of time. And apparently we also needed alien introduction to help. So they had aliens on site at Montauk that traveled there from Los Alamos through hyperloops that are underground through deep underground military bases.
Nice.
It gets really, really weird.
I know. You want to hear something really weird? Like back in the day when I first started taking visits out to that Camp Hero, when I first started learning about it and going out there and checking it out, we ran into an alleged psychic that was abducted by aliens. That's what she claimed. And they implanted something in her. Yeah. And she claims that when they abducted her, that they implanted something in her arm, and she had like tests and x-rays and stuff, to try to see what was in there, and claims that, they showed something in there. And if they, apparently if they surgically remove it, she could die. Anyway,
her arm got cut off.
Yeah, I don't know.
What if she got into like an accident and her arm got cut off, but she died?
Maybe. I don't know. I gotta remember her name. I can't remember her name. It's on the
crazy lady with something in her arm.
Yeah. But
Nicole says maybe 2020 is a result of the time travel butterfly effect. Yo, I will buy that at this point.
Oh man! So guys, if you're tuning in late, we have Gary Greener on here with us.
Apologize right now.
This subject is heavy. It's kind of really all over the place because it involves a lot of things. So bear with us. You'll kind of have an understanding of where we're going with it, I hope. It involves the Philadelphia experiment, the Montauk project, and
time travel, thought form, psychic, government conspiracy, alien interaction.
Yep. Everything.
End of the world type stuff, but brought back from the brink of destruction. Michael Pare. I mean, everything involved.
And what's really fucked up, excuse my language, but what's really fucked up is the new movie of the Philadelphia experiment, the remake. I don't know if you've seen the remake. Michael Pare was in the remake, but he plays a bad guy and he kills people in it. Damn it. He was the hero in the original.
They really can't remake movies from the 80s anymore.
It wasn't that good.
Always do something weird with it, make it wrong, just make it worse.
Yeah.
Except Rob Zombie, he can make stuff and it.
But after watching him play that role in the original Philadelphia experiment, then seeing him as a bad guy working for the government trying to kill people. I don't think
I've ever seen Michael Pare as a bad guy in anything.
That's what I mean. I couldn't.
So you can't do that.
It didn't work.
That's not fair.
I know.
Now I'm depressed.
I know. And guys, there's a lot of other documentaries that tie into this. If you guys have Amazon Prime, I suggest.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, I recommend Beyond the Spectrum, Underground Bases, which ties into this.
That's my boy Phil Schneider.
Yep. Phil Schneider. His father allegedly, I believe, worked for the military, German military, and I think
he was a Nazi U-boat captain that switched sides.
Yes, he switched sides because he was like super intelligent and had these crazy ideas like Albert Einstein, and they were very much into UFOs, and they got a lot of ideas off of his work and
his digging with nuclear bombs.
Yeah. So that's a documentary I would suggest. It's free on Amazon Prime. What other documentaries are there? There's one about Nikolai Tesla.
If you can look up anything, if you want, all right, if this is interesting, yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now, I've spent years researching all this, and not because I want to be the aficionado on it, because it takes years, because you start down one path and it's like by the time you get to the end of that path, you're like, holy shit, and you go back and they're like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
It's like a bad trip you keep going back to.
Yeah, that's why it's Gary's fault that I made this an hour and a half show.
Yes, it is. But are you ready for the biggest brain tease at all?
But that we haven't done that already?
Oh, yeah. Getting back to Montauk, we talked about the chair. We're talking about the chrono screens. We're talking about having a secret government time force going through a time tunnel out of Montauk that can bounce them up to a Mars base that they only use children, by the way, because apparently their chemical balance allows them to be able to manage it and not go nuts. With all of that taking place, this is all leading up to 1983, when the section of the Montauk base disappears and goes to the Eldridge.
Recently there's an article floating around. I don't know how long, when it came out or when it was released, what year, but I don't know if you heard about this one, about the little kid that claimed that he was from the future. And
the Star Child?
Yeah, the Star Child.
Yeah, well, the new Star Child that's out there. Yeah, he's from the future. He's like 10 years old, and but he speaks like 7 languages, can do complicated fractions.
But the shit he comes out with was like, what the hell? And I'm wondering if this is somehow all related to him too.
Yes. Because here's the other thing. All right, so if you decide to just take, I'm trying to remember the name of the project that utilized children time travelers, and for the life of me, I can't think of it. I'm gonna find it because now it's gonna bug the hell out of me.
And not Psychic Kids on the TV show. We're not talking about that type of Psychic Kids.
Can find out because I know one of the time travelers. Apparently, in addition to this, one of the people that came forward saying that they were part of the project originally, he also said that Obama was in the project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Andrew Basiago.
That
he was part of this kid project, but his also involves Sasquatch.
Oh,
yeah, Bigfoot was a time traveler, according to this guy. But when he gave, I'm trying to think of the name of the project. But when he told me, when I heard the name, I researched the name, and I was like, wow, this actually has something into it. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, all this nightmare stuff's going on in Montauk. Kids are getting yanked off the street. Why? Because they officially closed the base down, but kept the projects going.
Right.
So they ran out of test subjects in the base to experiment on. Who is Eddie?
Yeah, my wife's like, love Eddie. I'm like, who's Eddie?
Eddie and the Cruisers.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Could be.
That was a good movie if that's what she's referring to.
So is she talking to herself?
Yeah, Eddie and the Cruisers.
Isn't Josie moderating the Strange Oddities podcast?
She's moderating her own chat.
And she's talking with herself in the alternate realities.
There we go.
It happened. There it is.
Wait.
She's not talking to herself. She's talking to another version of herself.
Oh, man.
Is there a common thread that might be significant and underestimated in its importance? Between the Montauk, yes, time travel.
Yes.
This is how they are linked via time travel. They're linked by a person named Al Bielek. There's actually, if you want to look it up, you can look up Al Bielek. You can look up Duncan Cameron. You can look up Preston Nichols. Ron, you should look up Preston Nichols because that's going to be you in 10 years. Oh, by the way, he did die a couple years ago. Remember we were talking, we weren't sure if he was still alive or not?
Yes, because for those that don't know, when I was researching this for this episode, I was trying to find a guest that was still alive from this,
That's the thing. There ain't nobody left.
Nobody's alive. They're all dead. I don't know about Peter Moon. I think he's still alive though, but he's probably up.
Might be, but like people that were like directly connected with it, really, there's like nobody left.
Oh man, I hear my wife cracking up in the background. She said she was responding to Ron.
She was talking to her alternate self. We know she was.
It's a cover up.
Project Pegasus. That's what it is. It's called Project Pegasus. You want to look up something really screwed up, look up Project Pegasus. It's about the government project of kid time travelers. And apparently that went awry. Like 1 in 5 kids never came back from their missions. So they're lost somewhere in time, whether it be in the past or into the future.
Maybe.
So maybe this star kid, maybe he is from the future. Who knows?
Who knows?
Peter Moon is alive.
Oh, he's alive and well. Good to know.
Not the musician.
No. Thank you for that footnote, Allison.
But so
we're having
Project Pegasus going on. They have the Chrononauts. That's what they call themselves, Chrononauts. Why? Because somebody thought that name was good.
Say that 5 times.
You have the Chair project going on. You have the Death Ray going on. You have alien interactive experimentation going on, right? All this nightmare fuel running through the late 70s, early 80s, and it all comes to a screeching halt with the Montauk project opens a time tunnel to the Eldridge, and somebody needs to jump through and close it off. This is how time works.
Yeah.
It started the project, but it didn't happen till the end of the project.
Yeah. You have to go back and shut it off.
Right. So they go back to shut it off. So apparently, after they get the Eldridge shut down and time fixes itself somewhat like that, the scientists and technicians that work at the facility sit there and say, listen, this is a bad idea. We need to stop doing this. But the government and the scientists are like, hell no, this is a great deal. So what they do is they decide to talk Cameron into creating a creature. They say, Cameron, the only way this is going to happen is if they can create a creature that they cannot control. So we want you to create a monster. We want you to get into the chair, and when we give you the signal, we want you to think of this monster and bring it to fruition.
The Montauk monster.
It was the Beast of Montauk. It was like this giant reptilian grizzly bear, winged, horned, like nightmare-fueled monster that materializes out everywhere. They named it Junior. Like, this is true. You can look
out of all the names.
This is true. Yeah. Janine says she's YouTubed a lot of things about them.
Yeah.
He's Preston Dimes.
Yeah,
So now
Preston.
the monster's there. Now the monster starts raining havoc on everything. Okay. Now remember, this early monster starts raining havoc, tearing up the base, tearing up the facility underneath.
And destroyed everything. Yep.
Government says, oh shit, we can't control this. It's time to shut the project down finally. But the problem was it supposedly had fused a lot of electrical connections. So they had to manually go in with torches in order to shut this project down. If there's a moral to this story, kids,
yes. Do not
put a giant plug on whatever you build so you can just pull the plug.
Yeah. Look what happened to poor Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, don't worry about switches. Just get a giant plug that you can pull. So when they pull the plug, it releases this huge electromagnetic, multiphasic, interdimensional type energy force and basically takes everybody out and wipes their brain memories. Whether it's a psychic energy, but now it's not until like 4 or 5 years later, everybody forgets about the Montauk Project. Nobody knows about it. All their brains have been wiped. Everybody knows the thing went on. Not the people that worked there, not the soldiers that were there. Nobody remembers the Montauk Project.
What project?
So then one day, this guy named Al Bielek decides to go to the movies and watches this movie called The Philadelphia Experiment.
Yeah.
And according to him, this triggers his memory regressions.
Oh.
And he remembers being on the Eldridge. He remembers going through time. He remembers doing all this thing. Now, we're not going to sit there and talk about the guy that wrote and directed the movie said it was all bullshit he made up to begin with, because that's a government cover-up.
Yeah. That's part of the cover-up.
Yeah. Cover-up. So, but no, so here's where it comes down to. You can find records from the Eldridge. You can find records from Montauk. You can find official military release documents that there was not only utilities being provided to Montauk Point, but there were provision resupplies, there were equipment requisitions and deliveries and stuff, leading all the way up into the 80s of a base that apparently was closed down.
Right.
You can find requisitions and stuff for these generators and everything else going back for the Eldridge. Yep. But then at the same time, you find documentation that states, well, it was never received. It never was there. Why would it need that stuff? Same thing.
Right.
So it's like, that's the crazy thing about it. I mean, yeah, somebody can make up a fantastical story after watching a movie and then turn around and say, oh, the movie was inspired by my story.
Yeah.
Right.
Anybody can say that. But, and Area 51 ties into this too.
Yes. So if you want to you offshoot that, going back to the Eldridge, going back to the Philadelphia Experiment Project Rambo, remember we said after the project shut down, it split into two different phases. The mechanical side of trying to make something radar invisible, and the psychological side of trying to figure out how to fix these guys' minds / figure out how to control them. The mechanical side launched off and headed off to Los Alamos. So out in Los Alamos, if anybody's familiar with Area 51, how Area 51 came about, the Groom Lake experiment, after the Manhattan Project out in Los Alamos, the government needed a place to test secret spy type aircraft and other things else. Kelly Johnson, actually, he was a test pilot, needed a place to go. So he was flying around out in the desert one time and saw Groom Lake, which is this giant natural salt bed, and said, hey, I got an idea for a base. So the government said, yeah, sure, you guys can go build a base out there. Now you need to figure out the logistics. They contacts the CIA. The CIA says, hey, we'll build you the base. So the Groom Lake facility is built. Groom Lake's facility sits out in quadrant 51, area 51. Yep. That's how Area 51 gets its name. If you look at ironically enough, if you look at a nuclear test map of the Nevada desert, it's sectioned off into areas. Area 51 is where Groom Lake sits.
One of the reasons I also brought up Area 51 is because Nikola Tesla also is connected with Area 51, because they take a lot of his so-called projects and establish some of his ideas with some of the black projects they do at Area 51.
Well, now you're talking about Hangar 18.
Yeah.
That supposedly was
which is a great Megadeth song, by the way.
It is a great Megadeth song, which was supposedly at Area 51, but it also believes that Hangar 18 is in Wright Pat. For those that don't know, when Nikola Tesla died, Nikola Tesla was a pimp, first off. He never worked a real day in his life. He lived in high-end hotels, lived in the high society lifestyle, swooned, all these rich women, were friends with all these rich, powerful people. And all he was a scientist. Everything was always paid for. He had a sugar daddy or mama his entire life. And his last sugar mama was the U.S. government. So, and he lived for the longest time because he didn't die until like the 60s. He was in his 90s. But when he died, the government swooped into his facility and snatched up all of his research, all of his equipment, any project that he had working on, and all of a sudden it all just vanished, just off the radar.
Right.
And speaking of radar, so apparently so the theory behind it goes is all this stuff was taken to Wright Pat.
Mm.
All right. Wright Pat was also where the UFO that crashed in Roswell supposedly went.
Yep.
Project Blue Book was ran out of it.
Yep.
And they had Hangar 18, which basically stored all this stuff. Now, there's an inspiration from that went into pop culture also. If you remember the TV show, what was it, Hangar 13 or something?
Yes.
Warehouse 13?
Yep. Warehouse 13.
That was a show that was based off of all these weird, whacked out inventions from Victoria era, basically all Tesla style created objects.
Yeah, that was a cool show.
It was a good show. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent many years researching all this weird shit. It's horrible. But no, so anyway, so all the stuff from the Eldridge went out that way. But because Wright Pat is too centralized, they moved a lot of their testing out to Area 51. There's nobody out there, except radioactive groundhogs.
Mm.
So that's where they developed out at the Skunk Works, out at Area 51, where they started developing stealth technology, starting back in the 50s. You got to remember that.
Right. And where did they get the stealth idea from? I mean, not only Nikola Tesla, but...
Well, the stealth is made up of multiple things.
Yeah.
And you can say it's from Tesla von Neumann's experimentation with making something radar invisible.
Right.
They were able to shrink it down to put it on a plane.
Hence the USS Eldridge.
The Eldridge, think about it this way.
Actually, it goes further back than that.
Yeah, it started in the 30s. But think about it. Trying to make the Eldridge invisible was able to make the F-22 Raptor invisible now. Or the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, the most sophisticated jet on the planet, because it's stealth. And not only does it have a composite a radar absorbing skin, and its cross section's been adjusted, but it also uses electronic countermeasures, which are still top secret, which comes from the Eldridge originally.
Right. Janine Mershaw says weird shit is great.
Weird shit is great, Janine, and that's why I always watch it. That's why I always read about it. That's why I learn about it. It drives my wife nuts.
That's why this stuff goes on Strange Oddities Podcast.
And it's perfect for this podcast.
Yep. This will be the first show that everybody's going to be like, what the heck?
Yeah, seriously. I told Matt I'm expecting at least 2 WTFs out of this whole thing. Somebody's sitting there, what the,
Yeah. Say it out loud. I don't care. Say it,
But, hey, YouTube might flag you one day. You might need these. You might need this show. You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
But you might know. You might have went to the future and came back and saw it.
But maybe I do know.
But that's the interesting thing. And now look, we've gone off the rails. I'm talking about the Eldridge and Montauk. Now we're out into Area 51. You took us all the way across the country to Area 51.
I screwed us all.
That into effect. You couldn't stay on target. Your ADHD got the better of you. And now we're talking aliens.
There you go. Because basically what it boils down to is like what Giorgio Tsoukalos always said.
Aliens.
It's aliens.
But no, all I can reiterate to people is, if any of this was interesting to you, I mean, it's a lot coming at you, because even with the new extended time of the new show, all right, even with the show having its new time.
Look, we're almost we're headed to 9:15 already. It's great.
It's still not enough, and it does. And for like all my friends out there, all of our friends out there that deal with the paranormal, especially with communications, Ron.
Yeah, here we got our first what the F. Anthony Simonelli.
All that stuff tracks back, holds into this. One of the biggest things, and Preston Nichols, when you look it up, you'll look up for Delta antenna. Apparently that was the antenna that broadcasted the proper resonant radio signal in order to open a time tunnel. So,
And you wonder why the Earth's magnetic field and the ozone layer and all that is like all screwed up.
It's possible. Project HARP came out of the Eldridge Project.
Yeah, blame it on the HARP.
No, seriously. In all honesty, you can actually
not
officially
AARP. That's we're not
HARP.
HARP.
Not the old people with the weird phone. Not Anthony and his giant button phone. But no, Project HARP, HARRP,
which also ties into this because
it's not even a tie-in. That is actually a direct offshoot reaction from Project Rainbow. Right. I won't say the Eldridge because Project Rainbow was bigger than just the Eldridge. Eldridge was basically the physical test subject for it. But Project Rainbow, outside of that, they were able to use HARP, which is officially designed in order to be able to create ultra low frequencies in order to talk to submarines running super deep. But also, they tell you it's there for vaporizing people that they don't like.
We'll just make them vanish.
But our big evil government no longer is in charge of HARP. Now it's a private tech group. Because that's so much better if Resident Evil told us anything.
Yeah.
But so when you want to talk about Tesla being like the godfather of a lot of stuff.
I mean, yeah, if you think about what he had his hands on.
Project Rainbow shoots out to a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And Project what was the other one? Paperclip?
Well, Paperclip was the way we were able to get Nazis to legally come to our country. For those of you that didn't pay attention in history class, at one time we had this little fight going on called World War II. We went against the Nazis. And unfortunately for us, the Nazis were way more advanced in technology than we were when it came to rocketry, radaring, location, GPS is spurned out of that.
Right.
So after we beat them in the war, in fact, once again, because of World War II is why Project Rainbow was created. We were getting our butts kicked in the war. We were outnumbered. We needed the U.S. military turned to science. They wanted to they started doing these super brain projects to try to get us the cutting edge advantage. And that's literally where Project Rainbow started from. And Project Phoenix for the propaganda aspect.
Right.
When the Eldridge did do all this and did take a crap, apparently, they shifted all their funds to the Manhattan Project instead. And then we nuked the hell out of Japan. So yay, industry. But that all comes out. So anyway, so after we won the war, we wanted all that rocket technology. We wanted to be able to get all that information. So we snatched up all the German scientists who were actually Nazis, not even just Nazis. They were all like SS Nazis. They were pretty up there. They used to put them at such a high caliber to make sure that the Gestapo wouldn't come around and like snatch them up and be like, oh, you're going off. So we needed to get them out of the country before the Russians stole them from us.
Yep.
Because we were stealing them.
Yeah.
If anybody was stealing them from Germany, we were.
Yep.
So they created a program called Project Paperclip. Project Paperclip's sole intention and purpose and functionality was to bring those scientists over under work aliases and visas. The ones that skip off to Argentina, like Mangala and stuff like that. Von Braun was a Nazi.
Yep, Von Braun, yep.
Von Braun headed the Los Alamos project for the Manhattan Project. So that was Project Paperclip.
Yep.
But hey, we got to go to the moon because of it.
Yeah. I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, the race to the moon. We after all that, we had to do something in the public to beat everybody else out and be the first to the moon.
Hey, if you want to take it full circle and look at it this way, Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Okay. Elon Musk is on a rocket that was based off of a rocket design that originally came back from a rocket design from a Nazi. The Nazis were around, what caused us to try to create new super scientific technological countermeasures that developed the Eldridge. right, that happened with the Philadelphia experiment, which then turned into the Montauk project that created the time tunnel that allowed us to have chrononauts that were able to establish a base on Mars just so Elon can go there. Welcome to time travel.
There you go. And think about all the shit that the USS Eldridge created.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hell, there's still weirdos wandering around Philly. But they got a great cheesesteak.
Yeah. Oh, I've had their cheesesteaks, so great. Ganya Paranormal says there was a psychic experiment called Project Deep Dive. It measured whether or not ESP or telekinesis worked via VLF frequencies. A subject in a submarine below sea level, psychic on the land.
Yes. Now, there is an experiment I had read in passing. I never got into a research where they did try to recreate the chair in a submarine because they figured a steel tube would be a good idea to do it in.
Yeah. I would think that's a bad idea.
Well, here's another thing. And you can start researching. It's like during the height of World War II, the military industrial complex was amazing, dude. We built tanks, boats, subs, ships, all these things. What does everybody remember about the Navy of World War II? The battleships and the aircraft carriers, okay?
Right.
But then you had so many escorts, cruisers, destroyers, and like I said, especially subs, high-speed attack subs, deep-running assault subs, countermeasure subs. So after the war, we had all this infrastructure of machinery to do with what we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I've come across research for stuff where there were so many other projects. Like one of the reasons why the Eldridge was picked because it was a destroyer that wasn't needed anymore. That wasn't going to be needed anymore.
Right.
If you go to Philadelphia Harbor right now, you can see half a dozen cruisers and destroyers still sitting there. It's called the Mothball Fleet.
Right.
There's a damn aircraft carrier sitting there in dry dock.
Yeah.
That's there in case we ever need to bring them back into service.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
it's weird. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Kooky. I love it.
Weird shit.
I'm going to try to get Ron to disappear when next time he's playing with his radio. He doesn't know it yet.
What really fascinates me is like where we went from, like technology from a certain time period. And if you think about it, it all stems from that one incident, and it spawned into this like such advanced technology in a short period of time. Like if you look at all the technology that we built after that.
Well, you look at the advent of the silicon chip. At one time a computer took up the size of my house.
Yeah.
You could fit, like, here's a 4 gig thumb drive.
Right.
There it is. It's in there, and most of this is housing.
Right. And before they were like,
at the time, in order to, all right. So say back in the 40s, back in the 40s, in order to have gotten 4 gigs worth of computing data capability, you would have needed countless number of Zeppelin hangers.
Mm-hmm.
The computer that was designed to break the Enigma code, which was an encrypted Nazi cipher, was the size of an airplane hangar, and that calculated up to like a couple megabytes of capability.
Right.
So look at that.
Yeah, there it is.
So in order to get our technology to make such a monumental advancement, it is odd. Did aliens help us?
Well, I don't know about that, but something helped it.
Did we have time travelers bring information back from the future to create it?
Who knows?
Where did Velcro come from?
I don't know.
As they said in The Graduate, plastics. It's the stories of time travel and thought control and Montauk and all that. Is that true?
Research it yourself.
Is it a fantastical story? research as much as you want. You're still going to have to ask yourself that question: do I believe this or not?
Yeah,
Older always said.
Right.
But
all right, we got 5 minutes left, Gary. Any big shout outs for you personally to anybody that's in the chat, outside of the chat, in the paranormal? If you want to, give any personal shout outs, you have anything going on you like to share with the listeners, viewers, I give everybody this moment to go ahead.
What do I got going on right now? I got to go to the DMV and renew my license.
That's important.
It is. I'll keep you all up to date. I'll give shout outs to all those people that I care about: Ron and Lourdes, Anthony, Giuseppe, all you guys. I love you. My beautiful wife, who hasn't killed me yet, and I don't know why, but I don't question it. Getting together with a bunch of people soon to go do a ghost investigation. First one in a while. Been really busy. Other than that, no, I don't write books. I'm not producing anything. I'm just that weirdo that does this for fun.
And I had a lot of fun tonight. I hope you did. I enjoyed the conversation. I thought it went really, really well, considering how deep into the rabbit hole we went.
Yeah, this is the second time I've been on your show. First time was supposed to be like this, just this round table with some like simple light questions, and you hit us with the most we didn't even finish the questions that last time.
No,
because of how deep we had to go into them. And now You're like, hey, come on the show. I was like, okay, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about something like this,
This ain't light.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, no. That's
the time you have that episode that's like simple, like are tarot cards real? I'll go on that one next time.
Right. Or haunted objects, or
Oh yeah, don't get me started on those.
Yeah, right.
But no, it is fun. I do appreciate being able to come back on.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. It was a pleasure. I always have fun hanging out on the show and outside of the show. We've hung out a couple of times. We investigate, together on occasion.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again when the opportunity arises. I want to wish everybody, fun at what's coming up. National Ghost Hunting Day is coming up. So for those who are investigating on that day, have fun, have a blast. We're doing our own thing. We have something going on that we're getting into, and we're
real quick. Now, everybody like this on Facebook, and then when you're done here and when it shows up on YouTube, go over and hit the thumbs up button on YouTube. Leave a comment. And make sure you subscribe. We got to pump that algorithm up so Matt can get a better camera.
Yeah, right. Yeah, in time, the show's going to get better and better. Now, I do plan on.
What do you got coming up, Matt? Other than that, you always ask everybody that each week. What do you got coming up? What do you got going on?
I ain't got nothing, man. I mean, we've been keeping a low key profile.
Make something up. Just say something.
I can't even make shit up, man. You can't make it up.
Come on, we're supposed to have a vaccine next month. Things are opening up again. Life's looking good. We might get back to how we were before taxes took us.
There you go. Yeah, no, exactly. I want things to be normal so that we can, go out and do bigger and better things, and do the projects that we want to finish, and do all those great things that we have, ideas with, and working together again with great investigators like you and other people that are in the chat.
I'd say I'm great. I'd say I'm okay. Take it pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't run.
So guys, if you like the show, please subscribe. Like Gary said, that little bell at the top right.
Hit that bell. Thumbs up. Leave a comment.
That's it. Leave comments. Keep watching. Keep listening. We have interesting guests on the show like Gary Greener, which he was a lot of fun. He was a blast. You never know who's going to show up on the Strange Oddities podcast. You never know who's going to come on
for the next episode.
Yeah.
Like a straight up clown. Find one of those ones in the woods, walk around like, hey, buddy.
Yeah. But guys, thanks for tuning in the chat. Really appreciate you getting involved in tonight's episode. Janine, Lourdes, Ron, my wife, obviously my number one, Allison, Nicole, let's see, anybody else I miss? Anthony Simonelli. Love all you guys that are in there. I appreciate your support. And all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and tune out the show. Gary, again, once again, thanks for being on the show. Big shout out to KGRA Network Radio. I always got to plug them, guys. You can always rewatch the show on the KGRA radio station, the biggest alternative radio station that there is out there online. Guys, go to their website, kgraradio.com. You can listen to Strange Oddities Podcast at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. Pacific Time. And don't forget your aluminum foil when you come and listen to the show. That's a big pointer. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go in solo mode here. Gary, we'll say our goodbyes after the show. All right, be well. And I want to wish all of our listeners, be safe, be well. And God bless to everybody. And, be safe. All right, guys. So hope you guys liked our guest, Gary Greener. Thanks again for being on the show. And I'm going to play our video. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Strange Oddities Podcast. You can listen to the rebroadcast on the KGRA Radio. Check out kgraradio.com for the rebroadcast at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. Pacific Time. You can catch the Strange Oddities Podcast live every week at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Please follow our YouTube channel for our live weekly show at 8 p.m. If you like the show, please give us feedback. Email us at strangeodditiespodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit our website, strangeodditiespodcast.wordpress.com. Tune in every week, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the YouTube channel. You can also look us up on Facebook. We have a Facebook page where all the news and information about upcoming guests and anything Strange Oddities Podcast is doing. Go to our Facebook page, give us a like, and give us a shout. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And again, thanks again for the KGRA for rebroadcasting the Strange Oddities Podcast.